I see a lot of people complain that movies are getting worse. That every year we're getting more and more terrible movies. A lot of remakes, a lot of reboots, a lot of sequels. And you know what? I have to disagree. If anything, we're living in the best era. Aside from the fact that right now we're in a very, bad situation with the coronavirus, and I really wish we weren't in this situation, but this is the new normal for now, and it might be like this for a while. But outside of that, we're in an era where, in the pop of a button, I can just touch a button and I can watch whatever movie I like. You know, if we were in this situation, in the '90s, you can't go to Blockbuster. That's not an essential business. You would just have to watch whatever was on TV, and there wasn't as many movies back then as you have now. Now you have an abundance of movies, but people, for some reason, still complain that movies now are worse than they were before, and I have to disagree. Movies are not getting worse. Everyone says that movies are getting worse. That all we're seeing is reboots, remakes, and sequels. Yes, we do see a lot of reboots. We see a lot of remakes. And we see a lot of sequels, and we see a lot of comic book movies. That is true. But at the same time, you also have movies that are completely original. Movies that are independent. Movies that have storylines that we haven't seen before. But yes, we see in theaters people going to see remakes and sequels and all this other stuff. And the reason why you see a lot of them is because you're paying with your wallet the decisions that the studios are making. If people weren't watching these sequels, these reboots, and these remakes, you wouldn't see more of them. Studios are using these existing IPs to create revenue. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You'll have, for every Marvel movie, you'll have something like The Mummy with Tom Cruise that didn't work. So they won't continue making sequels. It didn't make money. If people didn't pay to go see them, you wouldn't be seeing more of them. You'll be seeing more original content. The problem is that whenever you have something original come out in theaters, it's a shame that people don't flock out to see it. Instead, it goes to stuff like Netflix and Hulu. That's why you hear the conversation of people saying that there's better writing now on TV than there ever has been. But at the same time, I realized something. This is not universal, but it does apply to most people, especially in your typical daily life. People like comfort. People like predictability. They say they don't, but they do. They like some unpredictability, a little bit of it, where they can at least almost see where it's going, but they don't like complete unpredictability. Whenever you make something that is unpredictable, people freak out because they're uncertain. They've never seen anything like it. So they kind of freak out. I'll give you a perfect example. Most people, have a routine. You wake up in the morning, you yawn, you stretch, you get out of bed, you take a shower, you eat breakfast, maybe you work out, maybe you don't, you go to work, come back from work, you unwind, spend time with the family, watch a movie or maybe watch a TV show, you go to sleep, wake up the next morning, rinse and repeat. And you do that over and over again, over and over again. And then on the weekend, you do something else. Maybe you spend time with your friends or you spend time with your significant other. On one weekend, you'll go to a restaurant, and another weekend, you'll go to the park. Another weekend, you'll do something else. But for the most part, it's variables of the same. If for whatever reason, someone in the household changed the routine, they'll start thinking, what's going on? I'm not used to this. All of that translates the same to movies. People like seeing certain things that are different, but at the same time, very similar. That's why you have a lot of movies that are successful even though they have similar plot lines. Perfect example, Taken. When Taken came out, people loved it, and I liked it myself. I love action movies. But if you've seen movies like Commando or 100 other action movies, it's the same plot. And it's been done again since. There's a movie with Halle Berry called Kidnap, which follows a similar plotline as Taken. And if you go 10 years before that, or even more, you had a movie called Cellular, which is a similar story as The Call, which is a movie that Halle Berry did. So she's done the same movie twice, and it's borrowed from a movie that was done in 2004. And all these three movies that I mentioned were successful. Because people like seeing things that are the same. The average viewer. And most of the people that complain are cinephiles. Cinephiles like myself complain about movies being the same, that we're never getting original ideas. We are, go on HBO, go on Hulu, go on whatever streaming site, and you're going to find hundreds of shows and hundreds of movies that are original. I've seen quite a few. Marriage Story was a great movie on Netflix, and it's pretty original, it's pretty realistic, and it's not a reboot, it's not a remake, it's just its own thing. It's a shame they didn't go to theaters, but 5 years ago, it would have gone to theaters. But why don't we see movies like that in theaters? Because people aren't flocking to see them. We used to see that. So you're speaking with your wallet. But in reality, most movies, all movies, are made for the average viewer. They're made to get people to forget about the world for an hour and a half or 2 hours and just enjoy what's going on the screen. And you're never supposed to take it that seriously. But people do, and people, especially cinephiles, like to complain, and they all are filmmakers. Every cinephile thinks they're a filmmaker, myself included sometimes, and say, oh, I've seen this hundreds of times before. Okay, why don't you make your own movie? And then you see their short films, and a lot of them are trash. Myself included, I've made short films, and they're all terrible. They're all terrible. But most people who make those short films, they'll say, oh, I'm this, I'm an auteur, I'm going to become the next, David Lynch or whatever. Not saying you won't, but point is that I'm getting at, no, movies are not getting worse. There's plenty of more content now than there ever has been. And good content. Yes, there's classic movies that you remember from the 90s, from the early 2000s that are very good, and they always are going to be there. But give yourself an opportunity to explore other films that are being released. There's a movie that came out, which won Best Picture, which I haven't seen yet, called Parasite. And from what I'm seeing, that's not a reboot. That's not a remake. And I've seen bits and pieces of it, and it seems like a very good movie. So, one that I did see recently that's not a remake or a reboot that was actually very good was Lighthouse. So, to think in that way that's very one-sided frustrates me. We're going to be seeing more movies in the future, and yeah, we're still going to be seeing a lot of comic book movies, a lot of remakes, but give yourself a chance to explore other stuff and be patient. So, the moral of this video is that at the end of the day, people are always going to complain. And these type of complaints are not new. If you watch videos from Roger Ebert and other commentators back in the 80s and 90s, they were complaining about there being bad movies during that era, and that they missed the era of the 60s and 70s. And I'm pretty sure if you read reviews in the newspaper back then of critics, they also probably complained that the movies of the 60s and 70s were just rip-offs of movies from the 40s and 50s, which kind of it was, because directors like Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, all these new directors borrowed from other films. Indiana Jones borrows from cliffhanger movies. It specifically borrows from the movie from Charlton Heston called The Secret of the Incas. The point that I'm getting at is that no movie is going to be completely original. You're always going to see retreads of other ideas. I think it's Joseph Campbell, who has a book, A Hero of a Thousand Faces, and the hero's journey. Most stories, there's about, 70-something stories, and you can kind of mix them around, and the complaints that you hear are from people who've seen way too many movies. And if you've seen way too many movies, you've seen most storylines. So yeah, if you watch a movie now, and say, oh, this is exactly like a movie that I saw in the 90s. Probably. But when you saw that movie in the 90s, you probably weren't aware that there was another film just like it in the 80s. But you had no clue because that was your first introduction to it. So for newer audiences who are introduced to a new movie, they have no clue. Perfect example is with Kidnap. If it was your first time, you're not a moviegoer and you watch Kidnap, you would say this is an original idea. But if you've seen The Call, you realize it's a very similar movie. And if you go back even further, you have Cellular. So forth and so forth. So there's always going to be people complaining. The same applies with music. People say, oh, music died in the 90s or music died in the early 2000s. There's always going to be different perceptions when it comes to music and movies and books and everything. People like different things. And there's always new things coming out. And sure, there's a lot of mainstream stuff that sucks, but there's a lot of other things out there that are not as bad. So, the simple answer is no, movies are not getting worse. But if you want to feel that way, you're entirely free to do so. It's up to you. It's your own perception of however you want to see life. I like to see things a little bit more optimistic, a little bit more positive, especially in today's day and age. So, yeah, I don't think movies are getting worse. I think they're getting better. So, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little rant. Stay safe. Stay at home. We're living in a very strange time now. Hopefully, this goes away, and I don't see it going away that soon. And it's a shame. It's tragic. Honestly, a lot of people are dying, and I'm in a situation where I'm still working. And I still see a lot of people not wearing masks, not taking care of themselves. For the most part, I'm covered with gloves and masks and goggles, and I disinfect and wash my hands so many times I lose count. But if you can stay home, do so. It's very important to stay home and stay safe so we can flatten the curve. I do, I don't want to sound negative because I do like being positive, but it will take some time for things to get back to some sort of normal. I don't think they're going to be completely like they used to be, but to at least some type of normal. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care, and if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave it in the comment section down below. Take care. Until next time.